Have you ever held on to something so dear, something that connected you to your past, your peace, and your very soul only, to watch greedy hands try to destroy it out of spite? This is the story of how my homeowners association, yes, the HOA, poisoned the very lake I grew up fishing in just to stop me from enjoying it. They thought they were punishing me, but what they didn't realize was that their own water supply depended on that same lake. I stood at the edge of the lake one early morning, the fog gently rising from the water's surface, the smell of pine trees, the soft ripple of waves, and the call of loons made it feel like my late father was still there beside me, holding the fishing rod, teaching me patience like he used to, me dad. You always said the lake would take care of us. If we took care of it, this lake wasn't just water to mine, it was family, it was history. My father taught me to fish here. I taught my son. And I prayed one day I'd teach my grandchildren too. But peace never lasts long when power-hungry people are around. As I packed up my gear one afternoon, 3 members of the HOA walked up. At the front was Mr. Collins, the presidenta, man with a smile as fake as the gold watch on his wrist. Behind him trailed Janet, who always acted like she owned the entire neighborhood, and Rick, the treasurer who never said much but sneered like a hyena. Collins morning. Tom, I see you're still fishing here. Me, of course. Been fishing here since I was 6 years old. Jeanette, well, the HOA board has decided that fishing here is disruptive. It attracts outsiders, brings noise, and lowers property values. I looked at her, stunned me. Disruptive? This is my family's lake. My father's ashes were spread here. I fish alone quietly. How in the world is that disruptive? Collins, you see, Tom, once you joined this community, the lake became subject to HOA regulation. From now on, no more fishing. Silence fell heavy. My chest burned. Me, you don't own this lake. My family deed predates this HOA by decades. You can't take it away from me. Collins leaned in, his voice low and threatening. Collins, Tom, people who fight the HOA. They usually regret it. He turned and walked off. Janet shot me a smug smile, as if I was already beaten. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. A week later, I noticed something strange. The lake water didn't sparkle like it used to. It had a dull, greenish tint. The fish I caught looked sickly, their scales rough, their eyes clouded. I brought one to my neighbor Gary, a retired biology teacher. Gary, this isn't right, Tom. These fish look poisoned. Could be chemical runoff, or something deliberate. The thought twisted in my gut. Deliberate. Who would poison a lake? But deep down, I already knew the answer. Late one night, I couldn't sleep. Something inside me said to go check the lake. When I got there, I froze. In the moonlight, I saw Rick, the HOA treasurer, dumping large barrels into the water. The stench was unbearable, sharp like bleach. Me, hey. What the hell are you doing? Rick stumbled, dropping the barrel into the water. Rick, mind your business, Tom. HOA orders. My fists clenched so hard my nails cut into my palms. Me, you're poisoning the lake. Do you realize what you're doing? This water feeds the well system for half this community. But Rick just ran off into the shadows, leaving the barrel floating, its contents leaking into the lake. The next morning, I stormed into the HOA meeting. Residents filled the small clubhouse. Collins sat at the front, sipping coffee like a king on his throne. Me, this is what your board is doing. You're poisoning the lake. Killing the fish? Destroying the water supply. Gasps filled the room. A few residents murmured nervously, Janet, that's ridiculous. Tom's just angry. We told him no fishing. Me and my father's ashes are in that lake. That water is life for all of us. And you're poisoning it. All because of your petty hatred of me fishing. For the first time, Collins looked uneasy, but he quickly masked it with a smirk. Collins, Tom, maybe you should calm down before making wild accusations. Nobody here believes you, but I could see at the crack in his mask. He was worried, because he knew I had seen too much. 2 weeks later, the residents started complaining. Their tap water smelled strange, tasted metallic. Children developed rashes after bathing. Seniors felt sick after drinking. Panic spread through the community. And suddenly, all eyes turned to the HOA. I stood silently, watching their empire of arrogance crumble. "Neighbor Tom, do you think it's the lake?" I nodded slowly, my chest heavy. It is. And I tried to warn them. But they wouldn't listen. One evening, I sat at the dock, staring at the still waters that once held so much joy. The fish no longer leaped. The air no longer smelled fresh. I felt tears sting my eyes. Dad, I couldn't protect it. But then I remembered his words. The lake will take care of us if we take care of it. And I realized this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of the fight. The HOA thought they could silence me by destroying what I loved most. But in their arrogance, they forgot one thing. When you poison the water, you poison everyone. And they were about to learn that the hard way. When people are blinded by pride and greed, they often believe they can bury the truth. But the truth has a way of clawing its way back to the surface. The poisoned lake was no longer just my burden. It was now the nightmare of every family in our neighborhood. It started with whispers at the grocery store. People whispered about the foul taste in their tap water. At church, families whispered about children breaking out in rashes. By the end of the week, there were no whispers, just outrage. One evening, as I sat on my porch, my neighbor Linda stormed over. Her little boy clung to her hand, scratching his red arms. "Linda, Tom, is this because of the lake? Tell me the truth. My son hasn't stopped itching for days, and the doctor said it's from contaminated water." I swallowed hard, guilt pressing on my chest stopped me. "Linda, yes, it's the lake. They poisoned it to keep me from fishing. And now it's in our pipes, in our wells." I warned them, but they wouldn't listen. Her eyes filled with tears. She hugged her son tightly. "Linda, how could they? How could anyone do this to their own community?" I had no answer. Just anger boiling inside me. At the next HOA meeting, the clubhouse was packed. Families demanded answers. The tension was so thick, you could feel it pressing against your chest. Collins stood at the front, his fake calm cracking at the edges. "Collins, everyone, please. The water issues are being handled. We've called experts, and we assure you the HOA has everything under control. Resident control? My wife's been sick for 2 weeks. My kids can't even shower without breaking out in hives." Another resident. "Why does the water stink like chemicals?" Collins' eyes darted nervously. Then Janet stepped forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "Janet, this panic is being fueled by Tom. He's been against the HOA from the start. Don't you see? He's just trying to stir trouble." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. All eyes turned to me. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling, but not from fear. From fury, this isn't trouble. This is the truth. I caught Rick dumping barrels of poison into our lake. Here's the proof. I slammed the photos onto the table. People leaned in, whispers turning into shouts. "Collins, those photos could be anything. You expect us to believe this over the word of the HOA board?" I don't expect you to believe me. I expect you to look at your children's rashes, your sick parents, the water you drink every day. The lake is poisoned and they did it. The room erupted. Some residents shouted at the board. Others cried. The mask of control Collins had worn for so long was gone. The next day, the county health department showed up after dozens of complaints. Workers in protective suits tested the lake and the wells. Residents gathered nervously, watching. One of the officials pulled me aside quietly. "Official, this lake has dangerous levels of industrial chemicals. Someone's been dumping large quantities. Deliberately. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands to clean, if it's even possible." My stomach dropped. Hundreds of thousands. Many of these families were retirees, living on fixed incomes. This would ruin them. Who would? Who would do this to their own people? The official side, official. That's for investigators to figure out. But whoever's responsible, they'll face consequences. I looked over at the HOA board members huddled together, whispering like rats on a sinking ship. And for the first time, they looked small. That night, as I walked along the lake, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Rick, the treasurer, the same man I caught dumping poison. His face looked pale, eyes heavy with guilt. Rick Tom. Wait, I stopped, but didn't turn around. Me, you've done enough, Rick. He stepped closer, his voice shaking. Rick, I didn't want to do it. Collins threatened to ruin me if I didn't go along. He said it was just harmless chemicals to keep algae down. But I knew it was more. I'm sorry, Tom. God help me, I'm sorry. I turned to face him, my anger clashing with the tears in his eyes. Me. Sorry doesn't fix poisoned water. Sorry doesn't heal children's rashes. Rick dropped his gaze. Rick, I know. That's why I'm telling you now. I'll testify. I'll tell the investigators everything. Collins ordered it. Janet pushed for it. I was just the fool who followed orders. For the first time, I saw not a villain, but a broken man crushed by guilt. I nodded slowly. Me, then do the right thing. Rick, it's the only way forward. Within days, the truth spread. Rick testified to county officials. Barrels with chemical traces were found hidden behind the HOA storage shed. The evidence was undeniable. The board tried to fight it, hiring lawyers, issuing statements, but their words fell flat in a community drowning in poisoned water. One evening, a town hall was called. The residents, weary and angry, demanded justice. Collins stood at the podium, sweat beading on his forehead. Collins, we were only trying to protect property values. We didn't know it would get this bad. That was it. That was the moment everyone turned. Resident U poisoned us for property values. Another resident, my daughter's in the hospital because of you. The crowd surged with anger. Collins tried to speak again, but his words were drowned out by shouts of betrayal and rage. I stood up, my voice cutting through the chaos. Me, this lake was life. It was memory. It was community. And they destroyed it out of spite. But we're not powerless. We can take back what's ours. We can rebuild. For the first time, I saw unity in my neighbor's eyes. Not fear, not division, but resolve. The cleanup began, slowly, painfully. Trucks came with equipment. Experts worked tirelessly. But what struck me most was seeing my neighbors, sleeves rolled up, working side by side. Linda brought food to the workers. Gary taught kids about how to test water safely. Even the quietest residents stepped up, pulling together to save what we had left. One afternoon, as I helped clear debris from the lake, Linda's little boy tugged at my sleeve. Boy, Mr. Tom, will the fish come back? I knelt, my throat tight. Me, yes, son. It'll take time, but they will. And when they do, I'll teach you how to fish, just like my dad taught me. His smile lit something inside me I thought I'd lost. Hope. That night, I sat alone on the dock. The moon shimmered over the wounded waters. It wasn't the same lake I knew as a boy, but it wasn't gone either. I could hear my father's voice in the wind. The lake will take care of us if we take care of it. I wiped my eyes, whispering to the empty night me, I'll protect it. Dad, no matter what it takes, 'cause the fight wasn't over. The HOA might have fallen, but true justice, the kind that heals wounds and restores trust, still had to come, and I was ready. The HOA poisoned the lake to silence me, but in the end, their greed poisoned themselves. Families were sick, trust was shattered, and their empire was crumbling. But sometimes, in the ashes of betrayal, community rises stronger than before, and the final chapter of this fight was still waiting to be written. When you take away a man's peace, he may grieve. When you take away a family's health, they may cry. But when you take away an entire community's lifeline, they will rise. The HOA thought they could bury their crimes under paperwork and lies. But this time, the lake spoke louder than their greed. The courthouse was packed the day the trial began. Neighbors filled the benches, whispering nervously. The poisoned lake had become more than just our tragedy. It was a story spreading through the county. Reporters snapped photos as Collins, Janet, and 2 other board members entered. Dressed sharply, but looking hollow, I sat in the front row, hands clenched, my heart pounding like a war drum. The prosecutor began with words that echoed through the room. Prosecutor, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a case about property values. This is a case about power abused, about greed so blind it endangered lives. The defendants poisoned their own community's water supply to stop one man from fishing. And in doing so, they poisoned themselves. The defense tried to spin excuses. Janet insisted the chemicals were just for algae control. Collins claimed he didn't know the extent. But when Rick took the stand, the room went silent. Rick, they told me to dump the chemicals. Collins said it would drive Tom away from the lake. Janet said no one would ever find out. I was a coward, but I can't lie anymore. I'm sorry to everyone here. Gasps, murmurs, even tears rippled through the crowd. Rick's confession was the nail in the coffin. Then something unexpected happened. The judge allowed victims to give statements. One by one, neighbors stood up. Linda, my boy, cried every night because of the rashes. He begged me not to let him take a bath. What kind of leaders would do this to children? Gary, I taught science for 30 years. I taught kids to protect nature, to respect water. And here you are, destroying the very thing we depend on for selfish pride. Finally, I was called to speak. I walked slowly to the stand, every step heavy with memory. My father taught me to fish in that lake. He told me it was more than water, it was life. And he was right. That lake connected generations. But you destroyed it. Not just for me, but for every family here. My father's ashes rest in those waters, and now I sit at the dock ashamed I couldn't protect it sooner. But make no mistake, we won't let this happen again. We'll fight for this lake, for our children, for our future. That's something you can never poison. Silence filled the courtroom. Some neighbors wiped their eyes. Even the judge paused before speaking. When the jury returned, the air was thick with anticipation. Foreman, we find the defendants guilty on all counts. The cheers erupted. Some cried, others clapped. Collins' smug mask finally shattered, his face pale, eyes wide with disbelief. Janet broke down sobbing, covering her face. The judge's words thundered. Judge, you abused power. You endangered lives. You poisoned trust. This court sentences you to prison and fines that will go directly toward restoration of the lake and community water supply. Justice. Not perfect. Not enough to erase the damage. But justice nonetheless. Months passed. Slowly, the cleanup brought change. The smell of chemicals faded. Clear water began to return near the shore. One afternoon, I spotted something that made my chest tighten with joy. A single fish leaping from the water. Small, fragile, but alive. Me, welcome back, old friend. Neighbors gathered more often, not just to clean, but to share meals, stories, laughter. The tragedy had scarred us, but it had also bound us together tighter than before. One evening, Rick knocked on my door. He looked thinner, humbled. Rick, Tom, I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted you to know I'm working with the restoration team now. Every day, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. I studied his face, the guilt still heavy in his eyes. For a moment, I thought of all the anger I carried. Then, I thought of my father's words about the lake. You can't undo what's been done. But maybe you can prove you're more than the mistakes you made. The lake, it forgives slow, but it forgives. Maybe I can try too. Rick's shoulders shook as he nodded, tears spilling down his face. One morning, as the sun rose golden over the water, Linda's boy came running down the dock with a fishing rod in hand. Boy, Mr. Tom, will you teach me now? The fish are back. I knelt, smiling, my eyes wet. Me, of course, son. The first lesson of fishing is patience. The second is respect. Respect for the water, for the fish, for the gift it gives us. If you take care of the lake, it will always take care of you. As he cast his line, I felt something deep inside settle at last. My father's legacy wasn't lost. It lived on in this boy, in every neighbor who stood to protect what we nearly lost. That night, I sat on the dock again. The water shimmered, not fully healed, but healing. I closed my eyes, imagining my father beside me. We did it, Dad. We saved it. Not just for me, but for all of us, and for the first time in years. I felt peace wash over me like the cool lake breeze. The HOA tried to poison my peace, my memories, my home. But in the end, they poisoned themselves. The lake reminded us of a truth too many forget. Water is life, and greed can never own it. This wasn't just a fight for fishing rights. It was a fight for family, for community, for the legacy we leave behind. And to everyone listening, remember this: when we come together, even poisoned waters can be healed.